Hi, welcome to another in our series of video learning modules with the Mother's Mental Health Toolkit project. In this Meet Our Mom series, you're going to explore the story of one mom and how her experience demonstrates the role of a community service provider in mother's mental health. I'm Dr. Joanne McDonald, and I work with the Mother's Mental Health Toolkit project with the Reproductive Mental Health Service at the IWK Health Centre and Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. As a community service provider to mothers and young families, we think that there's lots of times you'll be able to create opportunities to promote and support mother's mental health. And we know that a mother's positive mental health promotes the development of her child, both in terms of physical growth and health, self-esteem, confidence and intelligence, skill and learning, and a very important quality of emotional regulation, which we know now is very important to relationship and functional success throughout life. In this series, Meet Our Mom, the Mother's Mental Health Toolkit project team will introduce you to case descriptions drawn from the real experiences of our mental health clinicians and our Family Resource Center partner staff. These moms have common presentations and problems that will challenge you to define your possible role and contributions to their well-being. The moms will also provide examples of how you might use some of the toolkit resources in your work. So it may be helpful to have a copy of the toolkit out for reference as we begin to meet our mom. You could also print off this presentation and make notes as you go. So our mom in this module is Sadira, and Sadira is a 28-year-old mother new to Canada. She's parenting a 5-year-old son, a 2-year-old daughter, and another 6-month-old son. Her mother-in-law lives with her at least about half the year. They're in a small apartment in a suburban area of a large city, and her husband has to take the bus to work for about 11, and it doesn't return until after 9 at night. Sadira had done an ESL class last year, but she remains mostly in her home and hasn't really practiced her English very much. She comes off and on to the playgroup at your center. She seems somewhat shy by nature, but she's gradually become more friendly with one or two of the mothers who lived in the neighborhood a long time. Sadira seems to them and to you, though, to be becoming somewhat withdrawn. Her facial expression is blank, she isn't focused on the interactions in the playroom, and she doesn't touch the tea that she usually enjoys. She sighs frequently and once appeared tearful, but quickly went to the washroom. What are 3 possible mental health issues that come up for you with Sadira? We'll give you a minute to think about those and maybe jot them down. So the Toolkit project team identified, number 1, that Sadira, not seeming her usual self, quieter with a quality of low interest or sadness, could be a sign that she's developing a depression. Her very little active interaction with her toddler and her new baby put her at risk of a distanced attachment, which is not typical for her. And there may be major stressors you don't know about that are distracting her and affecting her function. So it could be more of an adjustment problem than an underlying depression. So what would you like to know more about our mom, Sadira? Think about the questions that naturally come up for you in this case. The Toolkit team wondered how long has Sadira lived in Canada in this particular community, and what were the circumstances of her immigration? So we find out that Sadira has only been in Canada about 18 months. She was pregnant with their 3rd child soon after coming here and had a number of medical problems in that pregnancy. She'd actually taken her English as a second language course in England, where the family had been before leaving Southeast Asia. Her husband is educated as a scientist at home, but he was laid off from his specialist job when the economy slowed here. He's working now on the front security desk of a large building to try and earn a living until he can find something in his field. She misses her mother, 3 sisters, and many aunts very much. Her mother-in-law is a more elderly woman than her own mother, has a lung disease problem, and needs Sadira's support. Her mother-in-law finds the children too active for her to care for alone, and she comes and goes on a visitor visa. Sadira was training to be an accountant when they decided to immigrate for better employment opportunities. Does Sadira see the difference in herself? With gentle probing that she doesn't seem like her usual self, she says she's wondered if something is wrong, that she could be ill as she feels so tired, lacking in interest and concentration, with frequent headaches and change in her body habits such as diarrhea and a frequent feeling that she needs to urinate. She has gone to the doctor but says he seems very rushed and she doesn't always fully understand what he says to her. You are not sure how mental health problems are understood or accepted in her culture and country of origin. She says these complaints started about 4 months ago when the baby was 8 weeks old. And 3, are there any particular stressors on Sadira's mind just now? Could this be simply a worry that makes sense with the things going on in her life? Well, she tells you that her mother is being investigated for weight loss and abdominal pain. She looks very poorly when they have Skype visit with her, and one sister is worried that she could have a cancer. But this has not been investigated or confirmed, so this just sits there as a worry for Sadira when she does communicate with her family back home. The family's finances are truly very strained. They came to Canada to better their prospects. Her husband thought he would have this professional job in his field, and she worries that it may have been a mistake. She finds her husband himself is getting very discouraged that he can't use his education. His brother is very successful in living in England, and she feels helpless, really, to know how to influence her situation here in Canada. So what could be the role for you or your organization in her mental health as a mother, given what you know already? Let's take some time to think about that. So some possible roles and contributions would be, 1, that you can support and encourage her in getting to your center as often as possible. The child care assistance and attention that she's able to have there will help support the children's development as you begin to help her sort out her problems. She can, secondly, discuss how to communicate to her North American trained doctor just what the new symptoms and changes are for her health. Something we can take for granted that people always know how to communicate or what to expect. This may be a very different health system than she's used to in either England or her country of origin. Provide information about common mental health problems mothers in Canada experience. That'll help to lessen stigma while exploring her cultural and family background more openly without making any assumptions. So she's identified her problems kind of more on the physical side, focusing on that she's tired, that she's going to the washroom more often, that she has some abdominal pain. You can always start with that as opposed to saying, well, maybe these physical signs are connected to a mental problem. Because again, you start with the distress that the person expresses. How might you use the toolkit resources, though, with Sadira? Well, page 16 and 17 are checklists for common symptoms and link that whole idea of body health to mental health. She may need help from an English speaker to write out her concerns in a more detailed way to give to her doctor. So page 19 is a help for preparing for a medical appointment. Very simple, but often helps the person to organize their thinking. And even if they can't communicate verbally, this is something that they can hand over to the doctor and leave as part of the chart. On page 118 and 119 on signs and symptoms are a review for you of some of the presentations of mental health problems. And page 121 is a mental health checkup checklist that you could go over and help interpret for Sadira. Perhaps you're not sure what Sadira understands that when you are trying to discuss with her. Pages 132 and 133 discuss some simple approaches to communication with newcomers. And page 135 actually has simple facial expressions that are visual aids to describing mood, where the words from one language or one culture to another may not be equivalent. You seek out newcomer services in your area and receive Sadira's consent to work with an interpreter. The interpreter helps her complete the Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale, which is on pages 139 and 140, a screening tool she can then take to her family doctor. She screens as having a likely postpartum depression. The family doctor does diagnose major depression and starts Sadira on an antidepressant you hope is safe for the breastfeeding baby. There's a long wait for mental health services, though. While Sadira is waiting for mental health assessment, you use the recovery plan template on pages 149 and 150 to look at possibilities that would support any person's recovery. So insights, improvements, interventions. Key points to keep in mind when working with newcomers is that it's often most respectful to ask, if you can ask, about the newcomer's experience. Many immigrants and refugees come from traumatic experiences where it may not have been safe for them to speak about either the circumstances or their own internal experience of that. Secondly, talking about what is typical for most mothers, particularly in the community you live in, can be an effective way to reduce the stigma of having a mental health problem and allow the newcomer mom to internally compare her experience to what you're describing. Not all symptoms a woman experiences are the result of the many adjustments for newcomer mothers, so it's important to remember that postpartum depression has been found in 10% of new mothers in many different countries, cultures, and economic levels. Don't forget to support screening as well for illness, both physical and mental, and help newcomers navigate the Canadian healthcare system. They may not know they can take the lead in communicating with their healthcare provider. Other resources that might be helpful in this sort of case are postpartum.net, an online source of education from a women-driven advocacy group in the United States. CIC.gc.ca is Canada's national government website on citizenship and immigration, and may be helpful background for you, if not to the mom herself. And kidsnewtocanada.ca is a Canadian Pediatric Society website that really looks particularly at possible barriers and tips to healthcare for newcomer families. Thanks for checking out our video learning module and for meeting our mom, Sadira. Hopefully you'll check out one of the other cases that we've prepared for you. Thanks.